Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Mr. Godrej, welcome to ThePrint. It's a pleasure having you here. If we may just start, we have been seeing a lot of issues with the macro economy in the country. There has been liquidity crunch, credit demand has not picked up. What is your view?
Well, it is true that the banking sector has had a lot of difficulties, and especially I think the agricultural sector and small industry mostly, aside from the large, highly publicized cases that are there which have gone to NCLT, etc. The banks, I don't know why they have got this type into this difficulty, because if they were really following correct process and principles, etc., of evaluation, they should not have had this type of situation come about. And so I really question, their method of how they evaluate, etc. And I think they need to be a lot more transparent in that. I think a lot of the banks are not that transparent in the way that they assess credit risks, etc. And I don't know whether there's a better system, but I hope that there is, because otherwise I think we would prolong this banking crisis for too long, and it'll hurt the economy.
What are the challenges right now which India Inc. faces? I mean, there are quite a few issues that CII, FICCI keep raising from from time to time. What, according to you, are the immediate challenges which need to be addressed?
Well, I think the basic point is, demand, one, and the other is structural issues of cost. I think, we have always had a high cost economy. The cost of transactions, doing transactions, the cost of transporting goods, it's well known, for instance, that, transport of the same distance within the country is much more expensive than sending it, far away from India. Now, I think some of these structural issues, if they are not addressed, it will have a dampener on the economy. So we need to do that. We need to look at infrastructure issues and the cost of infrastructure. We need to see what are the banking transaction costs in terms of, how high it is in comparison to other countries around us, and also think about how we can actually create more demand in not just in the main cities but also in tier 2 and tier 3 towns.
What about cost of credit? One of the demands is that the cost of credit must be sort of brought down. What is your view on that?
Well, I don't think that there is any debate on that. The cost of credit should come down. But I think that unless you address the structural issues of the economy, I don't see how you're going to be able to get that cost down. I think we've got a situation where, a few people pay for the ills of others. And you have to sort that out first before you can, really get the cost of credit down.
Before we move on to your company, just one more question. Export sector has not been doing too well. Do you think demand just from the domestic market will be enough to sort of create that kind of a growth that we are looking at?
Well, I think we've seen it all over the world. China has grown its economy for 3 decades on the back of, huge exports. And if we don't do that, there's no hope for us to, get to any growth of GDP above 10%.
But there is a slowdown, imminent slowdown. Global economy is going to slow down. So do you think obviously that'll impact the Indian economy, but what are the steps that the government should take to ensure that the impact is restricted?
Our share of global trade is so small that doubling it should not be a big deal.
Sure.
So, we are not in the league of China and many of the other Southeast Asian countries which have grown on the back of large export. And so I think that there is enormous scope for us. We've got to be more targeted in terms of products, more innovation. We've got to get our transaction costs down. We've got to be able to give credit very often for large export projects. Which we are almost always get sort of outpriced on. So there is enough and more opportunity to increase our exports. despite the fact that the world is in a slowdown.
Talking about Godrej, you had announced an expansion plan with about an investment of about 400 crore. Where are we on that?
No, you must be more specific about which business, etc. Because, overall, I think we are investing a lot more than that, than 400 crores. I think, what we are actually in the process of doubling our production capacity. So over the next 4 or 5 years, we will double our capacity by setting up new factories outside of our bases, current bases. And we need to have more geographical spread, and we need to invest more in automation, more in in things that will make our production much more streamlined and more cost effective.
Which segments would be your focus areas?
Well, we are expanding in all. We're in appliances, in furniture, in all our strategic work that we do. We're expanding in that. I think there's adequate opportunity for us to grow our capacity in order to be able to meet the challenge that we see is coming.
You had also entered the aerospace segment. How has been your experience, considering we have had quite a few issues, not of course with your company, but we have seen a few issues. What has been your experience in this segment?
So we have sort of concentrated on making very, very difficult to make precision parts and subcomponents and sort of sub-assemblies and things like that, which go into major armament programs and things like that. And so we are very niche in that way. We concentrate on certain programs, and we try to get a balance between domestic programs and export. And we want to export to all the tier 1 people in the world as far as our products are concerned. And we feel that we have a lot of expertise in sheet metal. We have a high degree of expertise in welding and forming and things like that. And so I think we will stay in the areas which we understand and know and grow in that area. And we see plenty of scope globally, not just on the defense side, but also on the civilian side.
But with the exports, the export segment not doing that well, how has been your experience in terms of exports, in terms of demands from other countries?
There's very good demand for aerospace components from the majors in the world. You take Rolls-Royce, Boeing's, Honeywell, all the major programs around the world. I think there's great scope. The other area, I think, where there is a lot of opportunity is in this whole thing of repairing and refurbishing and servicing of civilian aircraft. The way that the airline business is growing in terms of passenger traffic miles and things like that. There's a lot of opportunity in that area. I think what has happened is that India, more or less, we have ignored that space. Air India did a bit of it earlier, but otherwise all the private airlines send their aircraft outside India. I think in time to come, there will be opportunity in that area also.
On GST, we've seen a lot of teething problems, but of course, the government and even the companies have said that most of the problems have been sorted out. But in terms of tax structure, what is your expectation going forward?
Well, I don't know about all the problems being sorted out. I don't see it that way at all. I think that
you think there are problems even?
Enormous problems.
Can you just elaborate a little bit?
No, I think the reporting issues, there are enormous reporting problems. I think there are problems of reconciliation. I think, the way that GST has been designed, I think the problem is that we should have really, reconsidered the way we were doing it and started with a different methodology. What happened was that the states used to collect sales tax, center collected excise duty, and then they found a compromise. Rather than that, I think everyone should have been told that, look, this is the way that it should be simplified. This is the way it will be shared. It's a simple, easy way to do things. Have reduced the number of rates from, it has come down, but still at the 28%, there are plenty of items, plus there's surcharge, etc. So I think the structural way, not just of the rates, but also the way the reporting is done, also the way that GST has been looked at as a way to collect, taxes, make it easier to collect taxes. It's certainly better than the way it was. Okay, so I'm not saying that it's worse, but I think that we can design something, from the ground up, which can be a lot better. And that is essential. We have to do that, because if we don't do that, then the current difficulties, are going to tell very quickly.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Godrej. It was a pleasure talking to you.